Survival horror is a game genre I absolutely love. Some of my favorite games of all time are in this specific genre. Although, when I talk about survival horror though, I'm talking about the ones that actually have fun gameplay. You know, ones where it isn't just running away from AI and hiding occasionally. I'm looking at you, Outlast, you boring piece of shit. No, I'm talking about the ones where you're actually given weapons to fight back and limited resources, and you're forced to adapt to the oppressive horror environment. I feel like this type of horror does such a better job at making you feel helpless and fearful, because you still feel weak even with weaponry at your disposal, making overcoming the horrors feel insanely satisfying. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a game that follows this formula extremely well, and that game is Dead Space. So this is embarrassing to say, but I've only just finished Dead Space recently. It's been sitting in my Steam library for like 5 years now, and I've just never bothered to play it. I mainly got the Dead Space pack when I was 14 because I wanted to play Dead Space 2 specifically. It had this awful marketing where it focused on it being self-aware that it was a revolting and terrifying game, with the slogan being, "Your mom's gonna hate it."
Why would they even make something like this?
Of course this appealed to an edgy 14-year-old idiot. Looking back on it, that marketing was genuinely awful. On the other hand, you have the Dead Space 1 trailer, which has an eerie version of the nursery rhyme Twinkle Twinkle Little Star playing whilst it slowly pans over genuinely disturbing scenes with sudden cuts to the main character being brutally attacked or murdered. This trailer somehow manages to portray how messed up the game is to an audience without a single bit of dialogue spoken. Show not tell, fellas, you get taught that stuff in English. It's very effective. Honestly, that trailer is what made me think, maybe I should actually try Dead Space 1. Anyway, let's actually talk about the game. The game stars a ship systems engineer known as Isaac Clarke. He's a silent protagonist who has the posture of an Osu player. The game begins with Isaac and a group of 4 other people being sent to a ship called the USG Ishimura, a planet cracker which had gone radio silent. You and the others were sent to investigate what has happened on this ship, whilst at the same time Isaac has his own personal goal of finding his girlfriend Nicole, who has been working there this whole time. I just want to point out that you can easily tell who in the group is going to die first. I mean, these two look like they're joke characters that were made in the Oblivion character creator. Anyway, shit hits the fan almost instantly. Your squad is ambushed by random grotesque creatures and you're split up from your squad. You get this tense chase sequence which ends with you almost being skewered by one of them. Thankfully, you're saved by Elevator Doors, your most reliable friend. Bam! That's the intro to Dead Space. It's short and sweet and sets up the oppressive atmosphere instantly. You are the one being hunted here. You are nothing but prey. Mwah, delightful. I love it. You never feel safe in Dead Space. Enemies constantly jump out at you in places you really wouldn't expect. I should probably mention the enemies in this game are known as necromorphs, and honestly, these things are quite smart. They aren't your typical survival horror zombie looking ass enemy that just fumbles towards you. Good job, officer. No, these things try and attack in packs, and they usually try and plan their moves, ambushing you constantly. You can sometimes see them setting themselves up to ambush you. It's fucking... I don't like it. What makes the necromorphs even more unique is the fact they go against the norm when it comes to enemy weaknesses. You're told multiple times to go for their limbs. The developers really wanted you to know about this unique mechanic. Like, they really wanted you to know, okay, I get it, shut up. I actually got into a rhythm of cutting off the leg first, allowing me to easily take care of any other body part. It was pretty satisfying. There are also different types of necromorphs, and each one is equally as fucked up. I'm only really going to talk about 2 of my favorites though. I could actually go on about why I love each one in this video, but it'd make it far too long, I'm sorry. One of them being this spindly fella named the Divider. It's introduced to the player so casually. It's just making its way down a corridor you originally thought was decently safe, and honestly, the subtlety freaks me the hell out. Also the sound it makes, oh god, the sound. Once you cut off a certain limb of this enemy, it divides. You get it? 'Cause it's in the name of the enemy. Into multiple little necromorphs, one of them being like a weird head thing called the Shambler. It latches onto Isaac and attempts to decapitate him, making itself the host of his body. It's honestly so fucked up. I love it. The second Necromorph is legit just the regenerator from Resident Evil 4. Except, this 8-foot fleshy fella is really angry. It makes the ones from Resident Evil 4 seem like placid goobers that just want to go for a nasty little stroll. It literally tears Isaac to pieces if it gets his blood-soaked claws on his sorry ass. The fact it can't die too makes it even more threatening. Oh, and also it's called a hunter. I should have mentioned that a bit earlier. He's a big old cutie. Can we just appreciate the death animations in this game though? Like, I actually go out of my way to watch compilations of these on YouTube, which is insanely morbid now that I think about it. Well, either way, let's check out Isaac's suffering. You know a survival horror game is good if it has unique death animations for each enemy. Since I was talking about the Necromorphs, I should mention that there's story-related reasons as to why they're even on the ship. I'm gonna be honest though, I'm not exactly that confident when it comes to the Dead Space story, but from what I've gathered, the Necromorphs are the former crew members of the Ishimura, although what's causing this is a big ass thing called the Marker, which looks like two pointy dragon dildos wrapped around each other. The Marker also caused hallucinations, which of course caused many members of the crew to go a bit loony. One of the people affected by these hallucinations whilst on the Ishimura is Isaac. Remember how he wanted to look for his girlfriend Nicole? He's led on thinking that she's still alive, but the game ends with a neat little twist that she was dead the whole time. I love the subtle nods towards this twist though. Every time you encounter Nicole and go off screen for a bit, she'd either be replaced with a Necromorph or she would have just straight up vanished. It's kind of weird. They aren't the only nods though. If you look at all the first letters of each chapter names, you will notice it spells out Nicole is dead. Okay, maybe that isn't subtle, but like, it's smart and I really like how the developers actually put thought into the chapter names just to have that. So, remember how I said Isaac was an engineer? Well, a lot of the objectives in the game are based on Isaac's occupation, and you're asked to fix certain parts in the ship. Of course to help you in needing to survive and escape from the Ishimura, you know, you have a drive to do this stuff. A lot of these engineering missions are the main puzzles of the game, and honestly, this is coming from a guy who does not like puzzle games except for Portal 2. These are extremely enjoyable to do. They didn't feel forced at all because, you know, you as the main character, Isaac, actually felt like you had a purpose to do these things. Speaking of engineers in this universe though, the engineer armor in the Dead Space universe, oh man, I love it. I love the whole clunky, industrial, dirty style of the armor. It really fits the job role of being an engineer. The armor has 5 different versions in the game, my favorite being version 3 and 5. 3 because it's the iconic armor used for the marketing, and 5 because it looks like a beefier upgraded version of 3. I would 100% cosplay in that armor if I had the money to do so. The weapons also have a similar aesthetic to them. The first weapon you acquire is a tool known in universe as the Plasma Cutter. It's so useful to the point that this shit can carry you through the entire game. It has an alternative fire mode which allows you to change the angle of your shots, which is ridiculously useful for Necromorph limbs. What I love about the weaponry in the game is technically they aren't even weapons. These are tools the workers would have used for jobs on the Ishimura. Like, I'm pretty sure the Plasma Cutter was mainly used for cutting up rocks and wires. Except for the pulse rifle though, that was a genuine weapon used by the Marines. The gadgets you get throughout the game are also things the workers would have used to make their jobs easier. For example, stasis, which is used to slow down enemies to make them easier to take down, would have been used for slowing down hazards allowing people to get past. The other tool being kinesis, which allows you to drag objects towards you from a distance. I mainly use it to respect the dead though. Either way, the fact that every tool makes sense in the universe is just extremely immersive. But I mean, hey, what's a survival horror game without immersion? Speaking of, Dead Space completely nails immersion. Like, if someone asked me to show an example of an immersive game, I'd just whip out Dead Space. You really feel like you're in an industrial clunker-junker ship, not just aesthetically, but from the audio design too. You constantly hear machinery. There's a certain room you enter near the engine room where you're just blasted with loud-ass industrial sounds. It scares the shit out of you, but I love it. On the topic of immersive audio, when you enter an area that's on the exterior of the ship or in space, every piece of audio is either extremely muffled or silent. Because, you know, space is a vacuum, which means there's no sound. I'm glad the devs listened in science class, because I certainly didn't. Science is boring! In certain areas of the game, you can hear unnerving whispering sounds, which I think are supposed to represent either the mark of fucking with Isaac, or maybe Isaac has really bad psychosis. It's only really in toilets though. The whispering's very consistent in the bathrooms for some reason. Is there something you're not telling us, Isaac? Overall, the audio design is super immersive. My favorite thing about Dead Space though is the style of the game. The whole industrial sci-fi aesthetic of the environments it's honestly been inspiring. So inspiring that even before I played the game, I used it as reference for my own 3D game environment for a college project. The environmental design is honestly so good to the point that even a single room could tell a story just from the things in it. Some of the locations in the game have even been infested with this necromorph goop that slows you down. Even the corridors in the game do a brilliant job at immersing me. Wait, hold on. We can't talk about immersion in Dead Space without mentioning the user interface. Oh boy, the user interface. I think I can safely say that this game has the greatest UI of all time. Let me explain. These absolute mad lads at Visceral Games somehow managed to make every single piece of UI take place in the game's world. What I mean by that is none of it takes you out of the game, except for the pause menu of course, but that doesn't count, shut up. For example, Isaac's health bar is shown on his back, which shows us how much health he has in the moment. This also applies to NPCs too, which just adds to the immersion. Another example is whenever Isaac gets a call, the call appears on a holographic screen in front of him. You can even see other NPCs have the screen in front of them when they get calls. Isaac, what are you watching? And that's only 2 examples of why the user interface is so good in the game. Also, the way Isaac interacts with the world makes him feel like a real human being. This man isn't a superhuman like Chris Redfield. No, he's just like the player. A frail human being, alone and sad in the deep vacuum of space. Except space is Earth. Listen, shut up. He's just a normal fella and he reacts appropriately to situations. For example, whenever you are fighting enemies, you can hear Isaac's heartbeat, showing that he's probably about as terrified as the player. Whenever you're about to run out of oxygen, you can also hear Isaac start to panic, gasping for breath. That's only 2 examples, but you get the idea. Holy shit, I've talked so much about how immersive this game is. But I mean, that goes to show how good of a game it is. Immersion is what can make or break a horror game. Dead Space nails almost every part of what makes a perfect survival horror game. I could honestly talk so much more about this game, but I don't want this video to be too long. But before I go, the last thing I want to gush about is my favorite chapter in the game. That chapter being Chapter 10. Straight away, this chapter hits you with a rich horror atmosphere. The environment is much more dimly lit compared to the other chapters, and there are dead bodies of the crew scattered around everywhere, surrounded by candles and weird markings. Of course this makes you feel on edge, but they went a step further and had that creepy nursery rhyme from the trailer being sung faintly in the background with constant whispers going on. It's honestly so amazingly horrifying. The main objective of this chapter is to acquire 3 navigation cards for a shuttle that have been scattered around the area. Each time you acquire a new one, you are sent back to the central area, where you are greeted with the ominous goddamn singing. Stop! So I've been talking about the horror elements of this chapter, but it also has extremely tense action set pieces too. Remember the hunter? Well, technically you didn't kill it earlier, so it comes back, and it's pissed. It comes at you when you least expect it and harasses you vigorously. You actually end up taking down this bastard in this chapter in quite a creative way. Once you acquire the navigation cards, you have to test the engines of the shuttle. This gives you a genuinely smart idea of luring the hunter into the engine's blast radius. Of course you have to take advantage of the game's mechanics to do this, making sure to cripple it and stasis it to give you time to run back to the engine test room to blast that motherfucker. This seems really abrupt, but I'm going to end this section saying that this chapter is a great mix of both horror and action. There are multiple twists and turns the chapter takes that I would really recommend experiencing for yourself. Listen, if you're a fan of the survival horror genre, or are interested in possibly getting into the genre, please give Dead Space a shot. I can guarantee you won't regret it. Also, rest in peace, Visceral Games. You will be missed.